Good evening and welcome. Tonight we'll be going over the history and geography of Liberia. Let me grab my pencil so I can point everything out to you. Liberia is situated in West Africa along the Atlantic Ocean you see right here. It's bordered by Sierra Leone, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast. I have this big book covering it up. We'll flip through this book after we go over its history and show you some beautiful pictures of Liberia. Liberia is a pretty small country. If I remember, it's about the size of the state of New Jersey. I think that's right. Anyway, it has three main prominent geographical regions. The first obviously being the coastline. While it does have lots of lovely beaches, it also has lots of mangrove trees and swamps and, that kind of area that you find in this part of Africa along the coastline here. It comes into play a little bit in its history. We'll talk about it briefly. In the more inland area, it is very hilly and very grassy. There's some plateau areas as well. You can see the only national park in Liberia right here. It's the Sapo National Park. And as you can see, there are lots and lots of rivers all coming down this way into the ocean, going all across Liberia. The most important ones, or the ones that always came up when I was researching, were the St. Paul River, you can see right here, and the St. John River. There's also the Sesto City. Here it says the Ses, but it flows into Sesto City. These rivers are important because these are big port cities that these rivers flow into and allow for ships and things. You can kind of see right here this little, like a little bay right there, but Monrovia, as you can see, the capital city, was the most prominent one, and we'll talk about why in its history. But the longest river in Liberia is actually right here, making up its border here with the Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire. This is the Kavala River. Once we get the farthest inland, this area here, it gets much more mountainous. There are lots of mountain ranges that go through this area. It's also where all the rivers are coming from. This area is also very heavily forested with very thick, very wet rainforests. Very tropical, very equatorial, as you can imagine. The equator's not that far off. This line right here is 5 degrees, so just a little bit further down we have the equator. The highest point in Liberia is right here. It is Mount Wutevi. And yeah, there are lots of big high mountains in this range and in this range right here. This is the Nimba Mountains, you can kind of see right there. Lots of big prominent peaks over there. And like I said, it's a small country, so that's pretty much it geographically. There's a really cool map in here that shows you where all of the ethnic groups live. It's really, really interesting. And I want to say there's like 11 or 12 different ethnic groups, and they all have kind of their own part of Liberia. It's a really interesting little mashup here. But let's talk about its history, because I think we're segging into that naturally. So, early man has lived in this area of Liberia for as long as early man has been around, but very prominent cultures and civilizations didn't pop up until much, much later. Probably one of the biggest migrations into the area was the Mande expansion, which came kind of from over by Sudan, when those areas started to, not collapse, but kind of fall from prominence in about the 12th century or so. There were also groups migrating down from the Mali Empire. That would be the Vai people that came from that area. But many different cultures came from all different parts of Africa, wound up settling here in Liberia. Some got along, some did not. There was some fighting. There was a slave trade. once there was contact with the Arab traders farther north, there was slave trade with them as well, along with lots of like agriculture and handmade things and things like that as well. But that was their prominent trade. And then in 1461, the first contact is made with the Europeans. It was made with the Portuguese. The Dutch and the British would also come along here and start trading. As you can see right here, this area is known as the Grain Coast. But at first it was more known as the Pepper Coast because peppers were the big exciting thing to trade with the Europeans at this time. And also slaves as well. But yeah, that's really a part of lots of Western African history. Jumping way ahead to the early 1800s, across the pond here in the United States, an organization formed called the American Colonization Society, or the ACS. It was a group originally founded by the Quakers, but many other different groups of people joined. And it was the belief that since there was a large population of slaves in the northern, or freed slaves, in the northern areas of the United States, that maybe it would be best for them to send them to Africa to start a new life over there. There were people who believed that it would be kinder to them, so they wouldn't face any kind of, persecution, racism, injustice. There were, abolitionists part of it who just believed that, all blacks should be free from slavery. There were slave owners who were part of this who believed that sending as many free blacks out of the country would be best to prevent slave revolts. It was a big mix, and many politicians, including many presidents, were behind it, the biggest being James Monroe, which is where we get the name Monrovia for the capital city here. So, eventually they convinced some freed slaves to join their group and send them off as an experiment. The first colony was founded in 1822. It was not a success, mainly due to disease and interactions with the native peoples who, didn't expect a group of people to show up and say, "We live here now." That had never happened to them before. But in 1867, the most successful, migration happened from America. About 13,000 people, mostly African Americans, but also some people from the ACS as well, moved here and established a few little colonies named after the part of America they came from. And as you can tell, that one stuck. And they were mainly just along the coast here because all of this area was part of the native tribes who still did not get along with these people who were now known as the Americo-Liberians instead of African Americans. So it was pretty tense. And after a while, it turned out that the ACS ran out of money to support this colony. It wasn't officially recognized by the United States. It was an official U.S. colony, so they weren't receiving any kind of political support. So the ACS urged them to declare independence, which they did on July 26, 1847. It was mainly recognized in Europe. The United States did not recognize the Declaration of Independence in Liberia until 1862, when the southern states seceded from the Union, and there weren't any senators or anything to oppose recognizing them. It's just the fact of that. Liberia, considering it was this brand new country on its own, did pretty well for itself at first. They managed to expand their territory, make a lot of peace with a lot of the native peoples here, but not entirely. They didn't offer them voting rights or citizenship for the longest time. The next major news out of Liberia would have happened during World War II. when America realized they had this great ally here, right here in Africa, perfect for getting supplies and refueling, things like that. But Liberia had a really poor infrastructure. They were fine politically, but not in terms of like a thriving economy, infrastructure, things like that. So the United States came in to Monrovia here and built a deep water port, and they also built a major airport there. And that really, really helped Liberia, because now they could attract more larger ships to import into Africa. It allowed more companies to invest in Liberia because they had a stronger infrastructure. And the biggest cash crop out of Liberia at this time now was rubber. Rubber trees thrive in this kind of environment. The one company that really went all in and invested in the rubber was Firestone. They constructed what is still today the world's largest rubber plantation, which employed lots and lots of people, and they put a lot back into Liberia. They built a lot of roads and bridges and a lot of infrastructure for the company, so it was a win-win for everyone. However, there were quite a few accusations of corruption in the government. Politically, things started to go sour, especially during considering the native tribes in the area still wanting more recognition. On April 12th, 1980, the president was assassinated in a coup led by a man named Samuel Doe. He was part of the Kron ethnic group. He wound up taking over the country and in an election became president. He was the first non-Liberian American president. But another movement formed against Samuel Doe called the MPFL. It was led by a man named Charles Taylor. They fought back violently, and this sparked the first Liberian Civil War. The second Liberian Civil War really bookended the first one. There were a lot of moments of peace in between. It was a rough civil war, and I've already covered Sierra Leone in my series, but their struggles really tied in with Liberia's. Rebel forces in both countries really worked together, mainly to exploit their diamond industries, and Liberia's rubber industry as well got taken over by rebel groups. It was a mess, and like very many messy, very sad events that happen that I discuss on my channel, we're just going to kind of gloss over it, mention it, and move on, because this was a really bad civil war. It went on for far too long, and far too many people lost their lives, were displaced. Just every horrifying thing you can imagine happening here in Liberia. It was pretty awful. A major peace movement came about in 2003 that forced Charles Taylor to enter negotiations. He was kind of caught in that because it was either resign and flee or be arrested for a war crime. So he resigned and fled to exile, but he was eventually sent to court in The Hague and tried for his awful crimes against humanity. He's currently in prison for that. So another election was held after that, and in 2005, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president. She's the first female elected leader in Africa, and she helped lead a rebuilding era in Liberia, which is still going on today. It's going great, honestly. In terms of the destruction that Liberia faced, there are lots of bombings and horrible things. The biggest hiccup in that period was the Ebola pandemic in 2014. It infected many people. If you don't know about Ebola, it's a seriously contagious disease, and it's super contagious after the person has passed. Being around a corpse that passed from Ebola, it's almost like a 100% guarantee you will be infected by it. And in a lot of African cultures, their funerals are, big events where many people gather and the body stays at home and people go and see the body, and carry it. And there's all sorts of different funeral customs, but that is what really, really spreads Ebola in this corner of the world. Considering that Ebola is extremely deadly, considering that since it wasn't identified as Ebola at first, people got sick and went to the hospital and got the doctor sick. Because of the Civil War, there wasn't a lot of doctors and hospitals in Liberia, so the doctors and healthcare workers were some of the first to die in like the big sweep of the outbreak, so that was really rough. But eventually it was contained. Liberia has been Ebola free since about like 2015, 2016. There's been little spots during that time, but they were contained and stopped. So it's very safe to go to Liberia now. You will not get Ebola if you go to Liberia now. In 2017, they elected a new president, George Weah. He was a former footballer, and he's the one, leading the country during this now brand new kind of pandemic. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. All in all, Liberia has recovered wonderfully from one of the most vicious civil wars in the world. I really applaud their efforts in that. And without further ado, let's get into the book. I'm going to zoom out a bit because I'm really zoomed in to show you Liberia in my map. And we'll look at some cool pictures. All right, let's check out some of these pictures of Liberia. Here's a good example of what a swampy mangrove area looks like. Here's the mangrove tree. It grows in salt water. So it grows along these hot, humid, swampy coasts. There's a lovely looking lady. Working hard at school. Awesome. They get to take their shoes off at school. That's pretty cozy. Here's a good political map of Liberia showing you where it is in Africa as well. And this is Charles Taylor over here. Just going to leave it at that. On a happier note, this lady slicing a mango and playing the drum. And this is a sad one. This is after a bomb had went off in Monrovia. The rebels really hit Monrovia hard in 2003, not 2013, my goodness. But here's a better picture of Monrovia today. You can see this building says Hope on the side. It's really nice. Very lovely coastline. Beautiful beaches. Looks like they're building a bridge here. Let's see, where is this? Near the border with Sierra Leone. This is a photo from when they were building the port in Monrovia. Traveling by boat, since there's so many rivers. It's a good way to get around when you don't have a lot of roads. Very beautiful waterfall in the forest. What's this? Oh, this is so interesting. So one of the other big exports from Liberia was iron ore. But by like the 1970s or so, they had exhausted all of the iron ore. So the mines were abandoned. And this one mysteriously filled up with water, and no one knows why. It has no inlets, no outlets. The water's clean and clear, and no one knows how this happened. It's really interesting. A good physical map of Sierra Leone. You can see all the rivers. It's pretty neat. Oh, here's a sad picture of a flood. Trying to save her little house there. Let's see, this city is, let's see what it says. This is Kabango. Looks very quaint and cozy. And this picture was taken in Buchanan. They've got some plantains, it looks like. Here's a good example of the rainforest. Very typical looking rainforest. Very thick, very wet, very hot. Sadly, a lot of trees are getting cut down to make room for farms and homes and things like that. It's really devastating, but the government has really been working on stopping that, especially once President Sirleaf took power. This is a diker. It's an antelope, if I recall. They're very tiny and cute. This is a kapok tree. And apparently, what is it? The fiber from the kapok tree is used to make life jackets because it floats. That's interesting, but they're very big trees. And here is a rubber tree. This guy's getting the sap out so it can be collected and turned into rubber and turned into tires and other rubbery things. Chimpanzees, very cute. And it says it's a pink trumpet vine. Very beautiful, very vivid. Some peppers. That's what the area was originally famous for. The national bird is the Liberian pepper bird. It's very appropriate. Very cute bird, isn't it? Like its tail. Oh, this is a dwarf crocodile. So apparently there's two kinds of crocodiles in Africa. There's the Nile crocodile, which, like, close your eyes and picture a crocodile. That's a Nile crocodile. And this is a dwarf crocodile, which is much, 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 much smaller. Still just as snappy and chompy, though, but not so much as a threat to humans. This is a Goliath frog. It is a big boy. As it says, it can reach 3 feet or 90 centimeters. That's pretty big. Here's another diker. They're cute. They look so sweet. And down here is a pygmy hippo. So, like, also, if you imagine a hippo, this is a different kind of hippo. Much, much, much smaller. Not really a threat to humans, but they are hunted and they are endangered, so it's very sad. Here's a beautiful mask. This is from the geoculture. Many of Liberia's different cultures have really remarkable masks. We'll talk about it in another video coming up later. I have 2 videos planned for you about Liberia. One's going to be like a reading. The other one's also going to be a reading, but it's going to be more about Liberian culture, so you'll learn more about masks and things. And stuff like this. Look at this hat. It's so neat. Looks like it's meant for some kind of celebration or ceremony. Here's the map I was talking about of all the different ethnic groups that live throughout Liberia. Many different ones, all with their own customs and languages and things like that. Very interesting. And sadly, they do have a history of slavery that goes way, way, way back. You can see these are Arab traders taking a few slaves, and some Europeans taking some slaves as well. Let's see. This guy, so I was reading about him. This guy was apparently a spy for the Patriots during the Revolutionary War. And this guy over here, apparently his name is Caesar. He was one of the last slaves in New York. This is an ACS meeting. You can see all the white people there discussing what to do with all these black people. And here's the original settlements. You can see there's Kentucky in Africa. This is Cape Mesurado. It was named by the Portuguese when they first arrived and started trading, so they just took the name. Pennsylvania colony, Mississippi in Africa, Maryland in Africa. And the original name of Monrovia was Christopolis. Very interesting. One of the other missions of the ACS was to spread Christianity. It is a very Christian nation today, but they didn't really spread it as effectively as they thought they would. This is a ship in Savannah, Georgia, heading off to Liberia. This man right here is named Edward Wilmot Blyden, and he was rejected from college, does it say? From college in New Jersey because of his race, so he moved to Liberia where he could be more appreciated. Here's Monrovia in the 1850s. Very quaint, very busy though. This is the first president of Liberia, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. And these are some of the crew people. Here are some rubber workers transporting their rubber. I should note when I say like rubber plantation, don't think of it as like a Civil War cotton plantation, things like that. These people were paid. They worked long hours. They were probably underpaid, but it wasn't like a slavery plantation, anything like that. This is Samuel Doe, who led the original coup. This is a really sad picture of some Kron people fighting for Charles Taylor. These are UN peacekeepers. You can tell by their hats. Here is a protest from the women's group that formed to stop the fighting. And this is the lady that led it. Her name is Lema Gbowee, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work. There's an interesting story in here. Let me see. After the women convinced, let me get my pencil. After the women convinced Charles Taylor to attend peace talks in Ghana, many chose to follow him to enforce his participation. At one point, Taylor and his soldiers prepared to walk out of the talks, and Gbowee and 200 women joined hands and encircled the doorways. Police arrived, threatened the women, and tried to arrest Gbowee. Gbowee responded by threatening to take off her clothes. Removing her clothes in public would be an enormous taboo, which, according to traditional beliefs, would curse and shame the men. The women's resistance became the turning point at the peace talks. Fantastic. Let's see, what are they building here? It doesn't say it doesn't say, but they're working hard at the infrastructure there. Here's President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She was president when this book came out. This person's voting. Here's the flag of Liberia. It looks a little familiar, doesn't it? Let's read about it. The Lone Star flag. The flag of Liberia has symbols also found in the American flag. In the upper left corner is a single white star on a blue square. The white star represents the freedom of the formerly enslaved Africans and Americans who came to Liberia. The color blue represents liberty and justice, and the blue square represents the African mainland. 11 equal stripes alternating red and white run across the flag. 11 is the number of people who signed Liberia's Declaration of Independence. Red represents bravery and dignity, and white represents purity. The flag was adopted in 1847. Let's see, here's Monrovia today, and here's a really cool map. It looks like a neat place. Very, oceany. It reminds me of San Francisco. That's why it makes me happy, I think, because it's like a peninsula city. This is the executive mansion, basically like the White House of Liberia. Let's see, Axel Addy, the Minister of Commerce and Justice in 2013. There's your interesting fact of the day. This is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf meeting Hillary Clinton, and looks like a movement to vote for her. Let's see, a meeting of the National Assembly. Very, very formal looking. Look at this lady, very patriotic. Ooh, look at these fishes. Ooh, these look so good. These shrimp or crawdads, they look good. I'd eat them. Picking some rice. Rice is a big staple crop in Liberia. It grows really, really well. And pretty much every ethnic group has some kind of rice dish. Yeah, it's an important crop in Liberia. You can see a resource map. You can see where they grow coffee, rice, rubber, cassava. And then up here is more of the mining areas. You can see the gold, diamonds, and bananas. Here are some of the rubber trees at the Firestone Plantation. And some logging. It's another industry. Liberian money, but they also accept American currency as well. A very rough looking road there. Here's at the port in Monrovia. Lots of big ships coming through. Friendly faces. There's always cute kids in these books. Yeah. This lady's making a bag out of palm leaves or palm fiber, it says. She's a Capelli woman. And this is a talking drum that was used to communicate between tribes. When they don't speak the same language, they could drum messages to each other. Having a big talk. It looks like we're at some kind of Chinese, maybe like school or lesson or something. I'm not sure, but interesting. A village in northwestern Liberia. Very traditional looking African village in the jungle. Looks really cool. We have a population map. You can see it's a small country, lots of people, so it's a little more crowded in some areas, but you can see most of the population's right here in Monrovia. Working hard in school. Studying hard. Doing some math. Oh, look at this. There's a box about when the schools closed for Ebola and kids had to learn at home. Wow. How interesting. This man looks like he's worshipping. Oh, this is the religion chapter, so yeah. Oh, wow. Look at this. Look at this guy. Let's see. He's a religious leader performing a traditional ceremony for someone who has died. That is really neat. Oh, so the Quakers were a big part of the ACS movement. They're pretty much the ones who founded it with the goal of, like, you know, helping others, but also spreading religion. Let's see. Looks like they're doing some kind of chanting based on the megaphone here. Yeah, this is for the birth of a child, it says. The Mandingo ceremony. They're dancing. He's having a great time. This and drumming. He looks like he's having a great time. This is, I'm not sure how to say his name, Wanlidi Pai, who's a really, really cool storyteller. I actually checked out one of his like short stories from my library and it was really cute. I'm not going to use it on the channel, but if you ever get the chance to read some of his stories, they're really awesome. They kind of remind me of like Aesop tales or even like Anansi tales, where it's about like animals learning human lessons about how to be fair and good. The first flag made in Liberia, the oldest Liberian flag. Oh, look at this. So this is George Weah, the current president of Liberia. Look at that great kick he's doing. Awesome. Yeah, he turned activist, and he ran for president against Sirleaf, and you know, the next election he won, so he's the current president. Oh, how sweet. Look at his face. So cute. Working hard on the farm. Cooking some food. There's a chicken. Here's some rice. It's a recipe for rice bread. Outside their little house here. Look at the handprint markings. That's pretty cool. Oh, and a beautiful wedding. Oh, look at this bride. She is beautiful. And a very proud looking groom here. Lovely. Look at the bridesmaids' dresses, though. No matter what culture, bridesmaids' dresses are never the best, but this is such a lovely looking bride. So cool. Well, that's the end of our book. So that's it for tonight. Move this back. My beery's out of frame, so I'm just going to do this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good night. Good night.